Hello, welcome to Rebel High Command Cast, a subsidiary of the IA Command YouTube channel and an Imperial Assault podcast that dares to ask the question, is a game truly dead if we don't let it die? This is episode 5. I'm your host, TV Boy, aka Noah, and I am joined by, as always, the second flock, aka Wesley. Wesley, how you doing today?
Hey everyone, it's been a crazy weekend for me, but it's good to have a little time to squeeze in for some IA talk, as always.
Nice, well I hope everything's going okay over where you are.
Yeah, mostly not so much with the girlfriend. She's had a few hiccups this weekend. Car broke, phone broke, and seems like her credit card might have gotten hacked.
Oh,
So we've been
ouch.
dealing with a lot this weekend.
Yeah, it seems like things like that tend to happen in clusters sometimes, and that's never fun.
Yeah, she told me like, okay, we got to fix the phone because I'm gonna need a phone, and I know three other bad things are gonna happen here, or they're gonna happen in threes.
Oh, yeah. Well,
Well,
at
at
least
least
you,
all three happened.
oh
I had to
no.
deal with them.
Well, hopefully you guys were prepared and hopefully it all gets fixed.
Yep.
Okay, well, before we jump into our discussion, here are your weekly community updates.
All right, so the only weekly update we have this week is going to be the tournament happening on 10/22. That's Saturday, October 22nd. It's going to be another free Vassal tournament online for IACP, and the winner is going to get a full set of professionally printed Season 7 deployment cards. And again, that's happening this Saturday, October 22nd, totally free to enter. I'll put the link to join in the description. The other big news is that we're going to be switching over from Tabletop TO to Challonge. That's Challonge, and we're going to have a community set up for ICP for all tournaments and events being run through Challonge. That's going to include future leagues and future tournaments. The reason for that being that, of course, most of you might know Tabletop TO is being shut down effective at the end of October, but we've seen a lot of performance issues with the site lately. It's been randomly shutting down on us the last couple weeks, so we're just going to make the move right now over to Challenge. So check that out. It's going to be really cool. It's got a lot of cool features that Tabletop TO didn't have, and excited for the move over to that. And oh, by the way, the tournament on Saturday is going to be a live stream. That's going to be happening from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. Pacific time. So if you're not able to play, definitely check out the live stream. We're going to have commentary from myself as well as the second flock and tabletop audio from the table if one of us is not available. So check out the live stream coming up on Saturday and definitely sign up if you're interested in playing. All right, back to the show.
Okay, and we're back. I thought we'd start things off with. Well, actually, let's start things off with games we've played before we get into anything else. Wesley, did you play any games since last time we recorded? We actually took a week off, I know. So, any games you played since the last episode we recorded?
Yeah. So last time we recorded, we were discussing a little side campaign game I was playing solo. You asked if I'd won the mission. I was letting you know I was about a round away from getting that win, but I did. I did secure the win in that campaign game of gosh, I think it was the Bantha Rider mission pack in the Edge of Oblivion campaign. Won that with Fen at 2 HP and everyone else wounded. So that was very close. And this was on the Imperial Commander app, and I'd turned on adaptive difficulty, and I don't think I'm going to do that for the rest of the that campaign. That was a lot. But in terms of skirmish, ICP, I did have one match that I've played, and it was, you've posted on your channel recently a match featuring an ATRT, which we haven't seen in a while. Coincidentally enough, around the same week, I did play a match against someone who was also running an ATRT trooper list, different players than on your channel. What's interesting though is that the list I saw in your log review was doing ATRT with a bunch of generic Echo-based troopers, and I think Luke Skywalker. My opponent was running the ATRT with more of a strong, unique trooper list. So it had Fen, Kotun, Cassian was in there, even though he's not a trooper. However, Instead of going too much into how that went, I would like to say that I have been working on a vassal log review for that game and hope to post that on my own channel pretty soon.
Oh, sweet. I look forward to seeing that.
Yeah, yeah. The last time we talked, I know I mentioned maybe posting something on YouTube. You seemed excited for some competition. That's actually not what I wound up posting, but we can talk about that in the mentions later on. But it did inspire me to think, you know what, maybe I can review some of my own logs that I go through. So yeah, if you guys want to pop over to the Second Flock channel on YouTube, within about a week or so after this goes up, you should probably see that log go up.
Yeah, sweet. I mean, I call it competition and joke, but really it's just
Yeah,
free content for me to consume.
yeah. I think I
So,
even call out in the first 5 minutes. I'm like, I know this is a TV boy style here, but I don't think he's going to have a problem with this. It's better to grow the community than keep it tight. More content's good.
oh yeah, definitely. Um, yeah, I played my league game. So we had a delay in the league due to first it was due to the hurricane. We were giving people more time to play, and then tabletop TO actually went down for a little while. We couldn't access any of the event pages, but finally after a couple day like a day or two, that got working again. And so I played my league game, and I think it was actually one of the fastest games I've ever played, especially in like a competitive uh, setting. It was my double Sabs list that I stole from Kyle. Full credit. Although I've made some tweaks as I've gone along. And it was on Arms. What is the one on Devron Garrison? Arm Salvage, I think.
From salvage.
Yeah, yeah. Devron Garrison against a elite stormtrooper and double shore trooper with double mortars list. With a E-web with line ambush, and he had all of his figures clumped up near the entryway to his deployment zone. And so he only had 4 activations, but he passed 4 times and let me uh, token up, focus up, and hidden up one pair of sabs that was right up against the edge of my deployment zone front edge. And I think I talked about this in my video against Derek, but a figure that's at the front of your deployment zone, if it can move 5 spaces, it can actually see into the opponent's deployment zone and get a shot if they're not hiding behind the wall. And so he didn't use any of those early activations to like split up his figures or move them. Not until he just did one with the officer when he had to, and he moved one of his shores up. And so I was able to activate my hidden focus saboteurs and had one go up and attack using priority target, one of his back row, like mid row stormtroopers, so it was able to blast on 4 other of his figures. And then with the other one, I had Heart of Freedom to be able to get that one a shot too, to move 7. And I gained 16 VPs from kills in one activation. And that was like, okay, that he was like, that's over. That's over. Good night.
Yeah.
And I think as you well know, I'm only available usually like early morning on the weekends, and unfortunately I think he's on the same time zone as me. Usually people are like East Coast time zone. It's a little easier for them, but
Mhm.
I think the early hour, I mean, is for both of us, but I think he had a game plan that he was going to execute, and that did not include spreading out figures and accounting for a round 1 double attack from saboteurs. So that
Yeah.
was a pretty done and shut game pretty quick. So, but now I'm 4-1 in the league, and I think that was our last round of Swiss. So, pretty happy with how I did.
Nice. I thought it was going to go to 6. Did they cut it 1 week short?
Yeah, we're cutting it 1 week short because everybody's results are kind of being finalized. There was only two undefeated players this round. So at the end of this
Mm,
week, there's going to be just one undefeated player left, and then we're gonna go. They're gonna go into top cut.
right. Well, it sounded pretty good for your record, and it's always a shame when a game goes by that quick. But at least you got to put your Rebel subs on the board and do exactly what they were born to do.
Yeah, I took it internally to the steering committee. And I was like, is this a problem? And we were like, oh no, because could have spread out. Had time to spread out. It was all clumped up. And
Yeah,
but we were talking about how Sabs just really punish mistakes. Like if you make a mistake, Sabs can punish really hard. And mistake is mostly just leaving a figure next to another figure.
yep. And I've seen the opposite where, you know, people aren't making those mistakes and the Sabs don't seem to do quite enough. I mean, they are only 3 or 4 points, so it makes sense. But you put so many support points in the list that if your opponent is playing well, they can underperform sometimes, especially without a if you don't put targeting computer on them.
Yeah, they struggle to deal damage to their intended target, but and you have to really load them up with tokens to make them consistent and reliable. But excuse me. Um, what am I saying? Oh, but if they have a target they can blast onto, because there's so many other command cards they have available that adds spread or area of effect damage, like reduced to rubble and heavy fire and collateral damage. Like they can spike all this damage onto the adjacent figure. And if you leave it so there's two figures or more getting blasted, like that's just a huge damage multiplier to their blast.
Yeah, yeah. The first time I went up against Rebel Sobs in IACP, I was playing around with Wookiees, and I think I did leave several next to each other, not knowing the whole deal, like what the Sabs could even do.
Yeah.
And then my opponent's like, okay, I'm gonna blast four onto this and blast four again, and started to worry. I don't remember who won the game, but I do remember being like, okay, if these Wookiees didn't have a ridiculous amount of health, I would actually be in real trouble right now. But instead, they were, taking damage, getting focused, and then going to attack. So it was still a close game, but
Ooh, scary.
they can definitely be scary.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's move on here to some comms chatter. So this is our segment where we go over some communications from or some messages from our community. If you want or to have your questions or comments read on the air, you can leave a comment on the YouTube channel here, or send a comment to send your email to iacommand01@gmail.com. And if it's appropriate, I will read it. We'll read it on the air and maybe discuss a little bit. So this week we actually do have some comms chatters. So the first one is actually a comment that was left on our last episode, and it was a question from Tuuru. I hope I'm saying that right. And we'll cover his other comment from that video in a later section. But he asked, does the command card sit tight do anything?
Yep, and just reading the show notes now, I had to pull this card up on Tabletop Admiral because definitely not a card that sees any play, to say the least.
Yeah, so Wesley, do you have any experience or knowledge of this card? Does this card do anything?
Well, it technically does something, right? I think this is a card that was printed in the core set, and when the core game was released, you didn't have, I don't think you had the rule where you could pass if you had more activations than your opponent.
Yep, that's correct.
So yeah, so if you had five and your opponent had seven, you still had to activate all five of yours, and your opponent would get two or three activations in a row at the end of the round. Sit tight would let you sit there. I guess you have to use it at the start of the round, though, so you basically have to fully commit to it. But you're basically committing to saying, I'm going to wait until you have activated enough figures so that you have less than I do left to go. And then you would be able to kind of go back and forth one activation after another. Right. Then they changed the rule and they made it so that you can pass. So if you're that guy with 5 activations, your opponent has 7. At any point in the round, you can just say, I pass. And I think that killed a lot of the point and utility of sit tight. However, I think there is still a niche use here because sit tight, since it makes you wait until your opponent has more groups ready than you, I believe, or
Until
sorry,
yeah,
yeah,
until the
until you
player
have more ready than your opponent.
yeah.
So if you have 5, your opponent starts with 7. You're going to sit there until they have 4 if you play this card. Once you do that, you're going to be 5, they're going to be 4, it's going to be your turn. You obviously can't pass anymore. But you activate your 5th, they activate their 4th, and you go down one by one. Your opponent's not going to be able to pass, and by doing this, you can technically steal last activation this way.
Yeah, so in short, what it only does now is it lets you get the last activation of the round, even if you have less activations than your opponent. So normally, if your opponent has more activations than you, or if you're tied with activations but you have the initiative, the opponent would always get to activate last no matter how many times you pass, just because of the way passing is restricted. But with this card, like you mentioned, you get to wait until you have more ready activations than the opponent. And so in that way, it will end up where you're both down to the same activations, but your opponent is activating theirs first, and then you get the last activation of the round. So what's the problem with this? Why is that not good, right? Because we know that a lot of people activation stuff their list at least to get to 8 so they can get the last activation on people possibly. So why would we not play this card?
Well, to begin, you have to use it at the start of a round. So if it's round 2, round 3, you're getting into the thick of combat. In a lot of situations, if you play this card, you're basically saying, come at me. You're going to get 2 or 3 turns in a row to take out my guys before I get the chance to start fighting back. And that's really not good because the whole point of getting last activation, first activation, is to get 2 in a row or 2 or more in a row of your good fighter activations.
Yeah, so another way of saying that is that getting last activation in the round is usually only important in the first round. I mean, it can be important in later rounds, but it's most important in the first round in order to, like you said, activation chain to be able to go last and then go first in the next round, or to prevent the opponent from doing that. If they don't get the last activation, they can't chain last first. But because it's only used start of round, you have to have it in your first 3 cards in your hand when you start the game. Otherwise, you won't be able to use it. If you draw it off of like R2D2 or planning, you don't get to use it that first round still. So that's another problem. The other problem with it is it just isn't really worth giving up a card in hand to get that last activation. Even if you do have it in your opening hand, like, it'll be useful and maybe it would be worth giving up, but also just adding to the inconsistency of the fact that in most games you're going to draw it not in your opening hand. So what is that? 3 out of 15, that's a 1 in 5 chance, right? So in 80% of your games, you're going to draw this card outside of turn 1, and it's going to be a dead card in your hand, basically.
Although, I guess a question I would have is why would this not be more useful in something like an Empire list or a Vader list, which might only run 5 or 6 activations, get Rule by Fear to increase the number of cards you're going to start the game with, and also have Zillow Technique to pitch the card late game if it doesn't go off when you want it to.
Yeah, it might be. Because what that increases your draw to 5. Because what is it called? Rule by Fear.
Hmm. Yeah, Rule by Fear. Yeah,
That's
it lets you draw
draw.
the start of the game round.
Yeah, at the start of the first game round. Yeah, so you could draw it with Rule by Fear and then play it. So that increases your odds to 1 and 3. So still 2 out of 3 games you're not going to get it in the first round. But you do have Zillow to pitch. Although I've heard Imperial players say like you shouldn't put dead cards in your deck just because you have Zillow technique. But I think that's the main reason.
And I guess if you really, really want less activation, it's almost better to try to guarantee it by stuffing your list with useful but smaller activations than it is to hope for a 1 in 3 chance that you get this card.
Yeah, I think it could. I mean, I think it's an interesting theory. I think I've heard people talk about possibly doing it in a Vader list. Um, but I don't know. I just don't. We never see it be successful. So, but maybe you guys and the listeners, let us know. What do you think about sit tight in a Vader list with Rule by Fear? You think it work? Have you used it? Have you won with it? Tell us in the comments.
Yeah. I guess one more tidbit here is if you don't draw it in the first round, with the newer card Smuggling Compartment, you could just stuff it at the bottom of your deck to never see it again.
Yeah, assuming you don't draw it off of like R2D2 or something.
Sure, sure. But talking Vader lists, I don't think that you would have R2 flying with you.
Or Callus, or if it's the second
Yeah.
card you draw off your terminal,
Mm-hmm.
right?
True.
Or if you stuff something else and then you draw sit tight instead.
Oh,
But
God.
yeah, definitely that's a good card for that. Okay, moving on. We had another one, an email. So I got an email from a listener who mentioned this segment. So I will go ahead and read it. But this is from a gentleman named, I think it's pronounced Mata, Mate. I looked it up with the little lines above the A and the E. I Googled it, and it says it's pronounced Mata, but I apologize if that's not correct. But he emailed me an email with 7 questions. And so I emailed him back and answered them as best I can, but I'll try to read these out on the air, and then Wesley, if you want to comment, you are welcome to. But so the first question here is the podcast name no longer Rebel High Command? Did it change? And I'm paraphrasing some of these questions. But the answer is no, that's still the name of the podcast. People may have noticed that I took that out of the YouTube titles, and that's just because I am trying to make them not super long, and I want to also, like, the titles are, a lot of the like searchability of videos is in the titles, and I want to make sure that important terms get included in there. And so to do that, I had to remove the flavor title of Rebel High Command, when really it's the IA Command podcast is what people are going to be searching for, and as well as Imperial Assault, and then trying to keep the episode number and the title short as well. But it's still in the intro, and it's still in the video description. This is the Rebel High Command cast, and also once we finally get the episodes up on like Apple Podcasts and stuff, it will be listed as Rebel High Command cast. I don't know. Is there anything else?
I mean, I didn't notice that they had changed on YouTube, but good call to Mate, who must have noticed that.
Yeah. So if you're searching for the podcast as Rebel High Command, just search for IA Command podcast on YouTube, and you'll find it. Or that's the other thing, is people who know that it's called that, they know how to find the channel. The people who are new, that I'm looking to capture their attention, they probably don't know that there's a podcast called that, but they might be searching for, hey, is there an IA Command podcast, or is there a Imperial Assault podcast? So that should pop up for them. And then keeping the title short will help them to be like, oh, this is an episode about initiative, or this episode's about game modes, without them having to read through multiple different titles. So anyway, that's more than I wanted to say about that. The other one was, why is there a security certificate error that pops up on the main IACP website? This is a recurring issue that we are working on fixing. It has to do with the fact that we didn't create the current steering committee. None of us created the main website. That was created by someone who precedes us, good friend Chris Emick, great guy. He was one of the founding members of IACP. He manages the website for us, but has been having trouble keeping the security certificate updated, and that's just something you have to pay for as hosting a website. So we're trying to take that off of his hands, which is going to be a bit of work for me, but I am. It's going to be good to have it under our umbrella again. So don't worry if you see that. If you do see that error when you try to go to the website, and whatever browser you're using, just click the advanced button, and then once you click that, it will say proceed to website, and then you should be able to view it normally. And there's no danger. We've not been hacked or anything like that. It's just our security certificate expired, so your browser is not able to verify a secure connection because of that, and that's all it is. Let's see, and I know that's a problem for a lot of people. It's very concerning, so I'm trying to get that fixed as soon as possible. Next one. So this one's more interesting. Is future IACP content going to be focused more on fixing existing IA cards or introducing new content? And my answer to him was pretty much a little bit of both, probably. I don't know exactly what the content of the next season is going to be. We're still ironing that out, or figuring out what we want to include. A lot of designs going on, but it seems that season 7 was more old cards than new cards, but still like a decent, about 2 new cards per faction, plus 2 to 3 or 4 to 6 like new faction neutral cards. People seem to like that. They like seeing old cards getting a new lease on life, and they do like to see new cards, but I think people are not as excited as when it's like more new cards and very few old cards getting fixed. So
Yeah. I think with Disney ramping up the rate at least with which they release content, there's probably going to be more and more demand over the next few years for more and more new cards, but um, you can't fit everyone in here.
no. Yeah, it gets overwhelming, and we hear from people who are like, there's a lot of cards each season even, and so we have to pick and choose. And also we know that like new cards are exciting, but people get really attached to a lot of the old cards, existing cards in Imperial Assault. They're just frustrated that they weren't competitively viable after the big power creep that happened in Jabba's realm. So we're trying to include those so that people can play with the cards they want, but at the power level that was set by the developers in Jabba's realm. Okay. Question number 4: will Boba Fett and Kane Somos get revisited, or are they just niche figures? And I told him that Boba Fett probably not, because he does get a decent amount of play. And he's pretty balanced right now, and it took multiple seasons to get him to that place that he's at right now. So it's kind of like we're probably not going to mess with something if it's not broken and it took a long time to fix. Boba Fett's not a figure you see all over the place. He's not like the Mandalorian that we had to ban, or like, I don't know, what else do you see everywhere? Like, I mean, you don't really see a ton of queen pieces that much anymore, right?
Queens. Yeah, not in season 7. We do see some IG-11s.
Yeah. So, but he did get some new toys with Punishing Strike. He was played quite a bit in season 6, which, I mean, he did get partnered with Mando a lot, but he gets played in multiple different archetypes, and he's in a good place right now. He's even like we've had less invested players message us over the years since he's been finalized and be like, he is like, Boba Fett's broken. Like, what are you guys doing? He's ridiculous. And and we've been like, huh? Like, that's not what. I mean, he's not overpowered, but the point is, like, a lot of people can't agree on whether he's too good or not good enough. Um, I think he just has this high skill gap, like high skill ceiling, where if you're really good and you know what you're doing with him, he can wreak havoc and be a real annoyance. And if you don't know what you're doing, he can actually die. Like, even though to me he always feels kind of immortal. Like every time I play against him, it's like, how the heck am I gonna kill this Boba Fett uh, with extra armor tokens and all this extra defense, and he just flies away 12 spaces over blocking terrain as soon as he's like in danger of being killed. So, uh, yeah. What do you think about Boba Fett, Wesley? Oh, I should put him up the
Yeah,
screen.
I haven't played him. I've heard that his damage is maybe a little weak still, but at the same time, he is a huge tank. And it's interesting you said that he got played with the Mandalorian that we banned a lot or quite a bit in season six. I was going to comment that I think the banning of the Mandalorian leaves some more room for people to be playing figures like Boba. But maybe the season seven meta has just kind of gravitated away from those hunter queens with the, sunsetting of that Mando.
Yeah, it's been a big focus on like generics for sure in season 7. People just playing a lot of generics lately. But I mean, that makes Boba even better. Like when you've got a bunch of generics and Boba comes in and weakens all of them with flamethrower, and then like picks them off with his command card, and then they're all weakened, and he has like all this extra defense, and they're just rolling like 2 dice or whatever. Yeah, he's a nightmare against generics. So we might see more of that.
Honestly, I like his movement mechanic. It just seems fun. Uh, Part of what I would want to do is put him in an Empire list, have some officers try to proc his abilities out of turn.
Yeah, that's really good. I mean, any kind of movement point cards like hit and run, urgency, you can all use those movement points on his abilities. And he's very fun. He's a, like I said, a skill piece. He doesn't come in and like rapid fire everything to death. It's not on his card. You kind of have to unlock his potential, but it's there. And we've seen we've seen him win in high level play. So the other
If
one,
anything, if anything, I think we'd be more likely to see a Book of Boba Fett, second Boba Fett, than we would see a revise of this Boba Fett.
yeah, and we see. I mean, yeah, we've gotten requests for that definitely, and it's definitely something that's on the table
I
because
did.
he has a Legion figure. So
Hmm. I was just going to say I did like the one that someone came up with a few months ago in new cards. It was like, yeah, he's a leader now, the Daimyo of Mos Espa. He's not a hunter anymore, but if you build your list a certain way, he becomes the person that focuses all the figures in your list. That was a cool concept.
I can't find a picture of
To
him,
have your
but
queen piece be your support piece.
yeah, it's not something we've looked at, so that's interesting.
Yeah, the
Um,
effect was something like, if you're not familiar, is like if you don't have any other unique leaders in your army, you can focus two of your scum figures at the beginning of the round. Something to that effect, but it's in the new cards chat on Discord.
oh, nice. Okay, so the next question was about. Well, we didn't talk about Kane Somos. So Kane, he gets less play than Boba for sure. He does get played though. He was played in between season 6 and season 7. He's got 10 games logged, of which he won 6 actually. So he's not trying to do bad for himself when he does get played. Uh, I think he's more likely than Boba. The problem is that we can't just reduce his cost like we've done to other IACP figures that have been underperforming in the past, because the whole problem with him was he started at 6 back in season 2, but he had the same problem that the short troopers had, where at 6 points he was doing too much activation chaining with like death troopers and strength in numbers, and it was pretty broken. And so that's why he got raised to 7, and advanced comm systems got lowered to 0, was so that Kane Somus could still be 7 points and have advanced comm systems, and they just bit the bullet on, well, okay, every officer is going to be advanced comm systems if there's no other leader that needs it, and it wasn't that huge a deal. So that's the story about Kane. But yeah, we don't see him that often. We usually see Krennic instead of Kane. I'm trying to bring him up here. And who else? Oh, and General Soren instead of Kane Somos. So yeah, we'd have to look into like redesigning him without making him 6 points. But yeah, what do you think about Kane?
Well, I think, like you said, people use Krennic if they want to power up their troopers. And I think, as a like that 7 point that's going to give other attacks, can see his issue being that he's not Taro, because Taro is great in a lot of ways. Um, I think if we were to change anything on him, maybe allowing firing squad to let him get his own attack in would be a nice way to work, because then he could shoot and then focus someone who's going to shoot next with a surge. Just throwing that out there. Don't That would definitely need some looking at and some testing, but um, he is someone I've considered for lists a few times, like trying to make a list with Advanced Comp Systems Kane and maybe some other 7 point unique troopers in the list. Try to get off some big, night piece extra attacks. Seems like it'd be worth it. But I think he's definitely in a much better place than he was in FFG, and I can see at least a couple people having a few reasons to run him.
Yeah, I mean, he got a 3 point discount, and he's
Yep.
got free advanced comp systems now, so he is in a better spot. Um, Looking at his card, I guess there is some things they could improve. Um, yeah, I don't know. Maybe we will have to take another look at Kane. Okay, let's chew through these because we still have our main topic to get to.
Yep.
Will IA Command ever put out an official tier list for IACP Skirmish to help new players navigate the complex IACP metagame? So this is a good question because I've thought about it. I do tier lists for campaign, mostly because campaign is a solved ecosystem that's not still growing. But ISCP Skirmish, the metagame, is still growing, and I want to let it grow organically. And so I personally do not have any plans to put out tier lists for ISCP, just because it would feel weird to me, kind of like putting my finger on the scale of things when I'm the one who is working as part of this team of other steering committee members trying to balance the game, and then coming back and being like, well, this card's good and this card's bad, and this card you should play and this card doesn't do well. That is a what is it called? Self-fulfilling prophecy, basically, of like, well, if I might think this is good and think this is bad, but I don't actually know for sure. But if I say it out loud, people are going to take it as gospel, and they're going to just play with the stuff that's high tier, and only the high tier stuff gets played, and the low tier stuff gets forgotten, and that will cause things to stagnate. Whereas I would like to see innovation. I want to see people trying different things out, and what's actually good, and not just going by somebody's opinion. Even with all the stats we have, like, stats can be wrong sometimes. Like, sometimes it's just not the case where the right player hasn't picked up that card and played with it in the right way to get its full potential out. So I encourage everyone else out there, like, that's what you guys should be doing. I don't think me on the steering committee should be doing that. Although I also tell the other steering committee members, because they have expressed interest in doing it. They just never got around to it. Like, go ahead and make tier lists if you want. Yeah, everybody else, go make tier lists. Like, tell us what you think is S tier and what you think is poop tier, and and because that's a good way for the community also to communicate with the developers, which is now us, like what's good and what's bad and what needs more help. Um, and so, yeah, I probably won't be doing a tier list, but maybe Wesley will do a tier list on his YouTube channel.
Yeah, I think it makes sense for the devs to not necessarily make a tier list. I mean, if the other guys on the committee wanted to, they could. But I am not on the committee, so I would not feel like I'm at a place where I want to tier everything here. Or like I think I could use some more knowledge. So I think, but you do kind of need a content creator to get that message out there. So I think in the future, it could be possible for me to kind of bring on some other guests outside of the steering committee, and we kind of do a podcast style where we go through all the stuff and tier list it together. I think that might be something you see one day, but definitely not yet. I haven't even gotten this first Vassal log on my channel yet.
Yeah, and I do want to stress that steering committee members are not barred from putting out tier lists or making content like that. Like Derek and Morgan and Jake and Josh, like they're all like pretty competitive. They are in the weeds with all of you guys playing the game competitively. That's what their thing is. I'm more of a like pulled back, bigger picture like stats guy that's like trying to figure out how to make everything balanced. I play competitively way less often than Morgan and Derek and all of them do. So, they could probably bring like a really good player's perspective if they put out a tier list. I just feel like a tier list from me would be just, I don't know, dangerous. It's like one way to
Sure.
say it. But anyway, okay. So, geez, what question are we on? That was
Six.
six. No, that was five. Number six. Is FFG still reprinting Imperial Assault products, and are they ever going to stop? This one's simple. Like, no, I don't see why they would stop. I follow a lot of Imperial Assault on social media, and a lot of people post like, "Hey, reprint just came in," or "Look, this store just restocked," and that's usually like about twice a year. I see those posts start to like really happen, and apparently IA is selling really well, and there's more new people getting into the game all the time. We see new players popping into our Discord and stuff, so as long as it's still selling, like I don't see why FFG would stop reprinting it. They still have management of the game. It's not one of the games that was passed from them to Atomic Mass Games, which I think a lot of people still get wrong, but yeah, it was not passed over from them. They still have full control over Imperial Assault. They just are choosing not to put any new R&D resources into it, and they're just coasting on sales of existing product, which seems fine to me.
Yep.
Uh,
I think one day they'll stop. That one day might be 50 years from now, though. So, like you said, no reason to see them stopping anytime in the immediate future.
yep, which is good. We want people to be able to get the game to play and then print out IACP cards to make it better.
Definitely.
Okay. And then final question. He had a question about advice for 3D printing since he doesn't have access to Etsy, which is what I usually tell people to do for getting like miniatures for IACP. Either buy the Legion minis or go to Etsy. There's some great custom minis for stuff that isn't made by FFG. But I have no experience or knowledge in 3D printing. I just know it's expensive and complicated. So do you do any 3D printing?
I don't. I have a friend who does, and I think I misread this question in the notes. My suggestion to get custom minis would be going on Patreon and finding a creator there that kind of does something like that if you can't use Etsy. Um, I don't know how the 3D printing process works, but
Um,
there are a lot of people out there that have a lot of stuff that they could, do through Patreon or something else.
yeah, if people are looking for information, I would recommend checking out Uncle Adam. His YouTube channel. He does a lot of stuff about miniatures, and specifically he does a lot of 3D printing. And I actually was listening. So between sending my reply email and recording this, I actually listened to one of his newer videos, was actually about 3D printing and like the costs and misperceptions about it that people have. And sorry, I'm trying to pull up his YouTube channel
Yep.
on the
And
screen.
you cut out for me. What was his name again?
Uncle Adam. So
Uncle Adam.
he's let's see, his channel's called Tabletop Minions. And yeah, he does he's a lot more on the hobby side of like tabletop wargaming. He has a really good channel and a lot of fun to listen to if you're into like hobby stuff. So anyway, so let's move on to, we did talked about the games we played. Let's move on to the rules question of the week, and we have also some more good ones for this because we were gone for 2 weeks. You know, a lot of rules questions got asked, and there were some really interesting ones. So I think we're going to actually cover a couple of these. So the first question, and because I wanted to answer this one on air because it's related to our previous episode topic, was regarding take initiative. So this question was from Tuuru again in the comments. Thanks for commenting. He asked, if your opponent plays take initiative on you, can you then play take initiative on them in the same round to take it back? And the answer to this one, and I'll go ahead and answer this and let you comment, Wesley, is no, you cannot play take initiative once your opponent plays it on you. And the reason for that is when players have card effects that use the same timing, you always go with the player that has initiative first. And the way it works is each player gets an opportunity, alternating opportunity based on, first you go with the player who has initiative. They get to play all of their cards in a certain timing window. Then it goes over to the player that doesn't have initiative, and they get to play all their cards in the timing window. And then you go on to the next timing window. You don't go back. So the way it works is take initiative says use at the start of the round. So that's your timing opportunity. That's your timing window, is start of the round. There's a lot of cards that say start of the round. And so first the player with initiative will be able to play their start of round effects. And then it will, once they're done, it goes to their opponent who doesn't have initiative. That's when they will play take initiative. And the initiative token will go to them. And then you'll move on to the activation phase. You don't then go back to the player that no longer has initiative to resolve their start of round effects, because that player already got to resolve their start of round effects. Hopefully that makes sense to people listening to it. Although, Wesley, what do you have any insight onto that as well?
Yeah, I was gonna say, do you agree that this is kind of a question that a lot of players have to figure out at some point on
Yes.
their journey through IA?
Yes. I've seen this question so many times, and that's why I wanted to talk about it on this episode, because it's a really important question, not only for the specific interaction, but also just learning how the game works in general, like how conflicting timing windows work and how you resolve cards that have the same timing window.
I was going to say this. I think this question is kind of the litmus test for when you start going from knowing the rules and playing Star Wars Imperial Assault to understanding how interactions and timings work in Imperial Assault and knowing, more complex versions of the rules. It's like when you find out that you can't take a take initiative, that's kind of when you start getting deep into the game, or at
Yep.
least an understanding. It's like something similar when I was younger playing, schoolyard Yu-Gi-Oh! And then there was that card, Mystical Space Typhoon. You destroy one of your opponent's magic or trap cards. And then as we got older, became teenagers and went to, more events, actual events, you started to learn, oh, the opponent can just play the trap card or spell card anyways at that time and it still resolves. And you find out that Mystical Space Typhoon does not negate cards. And that always felt like a big thing that people had to learn, that separated kind of newer players from players who kind of understood the deepness of the game. And I feel like the take initiative is kind of the analogy, the same thing for that in this game.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic metaphor. I remember people talking about that too in school. Um, And then the one thing I want to say more about this is I mentioned that when players have conflicting timing windows, the player with initiative plays their cards first. The only time that's not true is during attacks. If this is coming up during an attack, the attacker plays their cards first, and then the defender plays their cards and effects. And that also goes for abilities that say after an attack resolves. Those abilities use during attack timing conflict rules. So just wanted to mention that. And all right, let's move on to the next one. So I listed out a few good ones that I saw, Wesley, and you said you were going to pick two that you wanted to do. So what were those two?
Yep. I know one of them was the wild attack and element of surprise.
Yeah, so the question there was somebody was asking, and I thought this was clever. If I have element of surprise and wild attack in my hand and I want to play them, can I use the element of surprise first, and then play wild attack and remove the white die from the element of surprise, so that I can bait out their negation and not waste my wild attack if they negate my element of surprise? And the answer is no, right? If you play element of surprise, you have to remove whatever defense die is already in their defense pool. So you have to play wild attack first if you want to then use element of surprise to remove the white dice from wild attack.
Right. So I think this is another good example of, timing windows. The fact that, if you're going to play two cards in a row, the first one is going to activate first. And really the only time you can play a card during the resolution of a card is usually if you have something like negation that plays specifically when you play a card.
Yeah, and I think this was from one of our newer players that joined recently. And I thought this was a fantastic question, not because of the rules interactions. I think the rules interactions here are pretty straightforward, but just the thinking, the strategic thinking happening here, right? He's trying to check for his opponent for negation before he commits his full combo. And I think that is something that people really should do more of when they're playing. Just cards in general, like there's a lot of strong 0-point cards that can get stymied by negation. Element surprise being one of them, but like to the limit is one that really gets people when it gets negated, because it like was their whole action chain was gonna, or their attack was contingent on playing to the limit, and it gets negated and they don't get to attack that round. We see this with like Onar especially. Mm-hmm. So just keeping in mind, like, is there a possible negation here, and can I possibly bait it out somehow with another card so that this a more important 0-point card goes off? Just very good strategic thinking.
Yeah, definitely. If you guys do check out that Vassal log I'm going to upload, I explained at one point I even threw out a force rush with one of my force users. And I honestly didn't know what I was doing when I activated that force user, didn't know what my plan was with him, but I knew that I had to activate someone, wasn't ready to do my final activation yet. So I threw out Force Rush at the beginning of that card's turn, it was Terra Malicos, and I really didn't know what I was going to do. I just had a feeling that my opponent had negation and was really hoping that they would play it to stop the Force Rush, because it would have let me hit other guys I couldn't normally, but I really didn't need it. And unfortunately, in that case, he let it go off, and I couldn't bait the negation, but I was trying to bait it so that I could play take initiative next round.
Oh yeah,
And
nice.
it is a very good strategy, trying to bait that out.
All right, I think we have time for one more, and then we gotta breeze through our main topic here.
Yeah, sure. So we could do a simple one here. The question about Leia, can she use a surge to recover if an attack misses?
Yeah, so what's the answer to that one?
So the answer there is yes, you can. So the quick explanation for that is you can use any surge abilities you want when you attack. If your attack is going to miss due to accuracy, or if your opponent rolls a dodge, you It doesn't matter if you use the surges to add damage because you're not doing damage in those cases. You can surge to accuracy, sure, that might change the results, but let's say your opponent dodges. No amount of accuracy, damage, or pierce is going to help, but they are still there. And then you can use other surge abilities for anything. The only exceptions to the rule, and this is where players get mixed up, but there are only a couple of actual exceptions. And those are for blast, cleave, positive conditions, and negative conditions. So if you have a surge focus, you can't do that unless your attack is going to do damage. If you're going to blast two, you can't do that unless the attack does damage. If you have recover two, doesn't matter if the attack hits, misses, or gets turned around and, hits C3PO.
Yep.
You can still do it. You can still recover there.
Yep.
And the C3PO thing was a joke. I don't want to get any rules confusions there.
Yeah, an important note for the conditions is that it has to be an condition keyword. So it has to be like surge, focus, surge, hide, surge, stun. If it's like surge, become hidden, like on Davith, that one he doesn't need to deal damage to go off.
Yep. Normally, if it's an ability, it will still work. Uh, if it's like an actual effect on the card with a lot of words, like you said, if it's not in keyword form, it should work.
Yeah. So
And the Davith wording is a good example.
yeah, because the surge for +1 damage and hide, that's a keyword that has to deal damage to hide him. But the fell swoop ability that says become hidden, that's not a keyword. That's not hide keyword, so that doesn't matter. So yeah, any surge ability that is like surge to recover, surge for gain power token, surge to gain movement points, those don't need to deal any damage to trigger. The only exception to this rule is on the lamb. If an opponent plays on the lamb on your attack, it was ruled by one of the devs, and it's been preserved on the Board Game Geek forums that because the target is lost for the attack, it's similar to like if the target was defeated while the attack was being declared, and the rules for that is the attack stops immediately, so there's no like modifier step, spend surges step. It's just the attack stops. So you don't get to go through the spend surges step to spend your surges on recover or whatever.
And you don't even roll dice if your opponent plays on the way in uh, in IACP.
In vanilla, yeah, you roll dice in vanilla and then you play on the lamb. In IACP, you don't get to roll dice first.
That gets a lot more confusing then. But okay, so that on the lamb is the exception to the rule.
Yep, and that's just from a developer's rules answer. For people that
Yeah.
don't know, in the old days, you could email FFG and they would provide official rules answers that they didn't always publish in the FAQ. And this one was a little bit weird in terms of how that works. So anyway, all right.
You still can though. You can still email them. They just take a while.
They've stopped answering mine.
Oh, I think a month ago I asked a question about Sun Baton. They'd eventually get an answer.
Okay, it must just be me then. I send them too many questions.
Maybe.
Okay, so for our main topic here, we're going to be talking about online play. So, for people that are interested in getting into playing online, so obviously, a lot of people have had to do this because of the pandemic. It was very hard to connect with people in person. But now, it's just a good opportunity to play with people that you normally wouldn't be able to play with, or to find communities that you normally wouldn't be connected to in person. Just sometimes you just don't have people that live near you or that have time to play in person. And so playing online is a great way to get in games that normally you wouldn't be able to. So let's see, there's two main ways to do it, right? So you have Vassal and you have Tabletop Simulator. So let's talk about Vassal first. This is the one I know more about, or I mean, you probably know just as much as me, Wesley, but I think you're going to know more about Tabletop Simulator than me. So Vassal is a program that, if you guys look at any of my game log reviews, that's Vassal. It's this 2D overhead flat system with the yellow logo. and it's totally free. You go to vassal.org, you download it. They have it for Windows, Mac OS, and Linux. And like I said, it's free and it's very low demand on your system, very low GPU. It's not gonna like slow your system down to a crawl or make your cooling fan spin up to infinity. It's just very easy to run, and so it's very popular. People, it's open source too, by the way. And we have somebody that in the community that updates it every new IACP update for us. So for it's ideal for playing skirmish because it's updated regularly. And the way that you play it is you download the software, you open it up, and then you download the modules for Imperial Assault. And there's two main ones. There's a campaign one and there's a skirmish one. Campaign one hasn't been updated in a good while because, of course, there's been no new official content, although it does have some of the fan-made content on there. But the skirmish one gets updated pretty regularly. And I'll put, of course, the link to both how to download Vassal and the module for Imperial Assault. Anyway, so once you've opened Vassal, you go file open on the module. It downloads all the assets you need, the like image assets, and then you're good to go. And then one thing I'll say more about it is there's also a great tutorial video on how to play Imperial Assault on Vassal by our world champion Brett Kelly, who I've got up on the screen, and he goes over how to install it, how to move figures around. It really hasn't changed that much in the last few years, and it's a really nice little program that we use for especially for playing skirmish, but you can also play campaign on it as well. I mean, I don't know. Is there much? What else is there to say about Vassal?
Well, I think, looking at any of the many Vassal logs on your channel gives a lot to like kind of how it looks, how it feels. Like you said, it runs on a toaster. So that's one of the good things. It's like a lower common denominator kind of software. It does, I don't know if you mentioned it works best with two monitors just because it's so many different windows, but it's
Yeah,
kind of like a heavily modified kind of Excel. It's like a grid-based map for you to play things on. Uh,
yeah. Yeah, I didn't mention that. It's because it's so Windows based. It's good to have two monitors so you can have your map on one screen and then your like hand and your opponent's hand and dice on the other screen. Um,
yeah.
yeah,
I was going to ask, because we're more familiar with the skirmish, have you had any experience with the campaign module on there or how it runs?
yeah. I used to use campaign module to play like solo campaigns, and play like the app campaign just solo
Hmm.
because it was super easy. Because the nice thing is you can, so as you guys all know, you can log your games, but you can also save game states very easily, similar to like saving in an emulator or something. And then you can just load it back up, and it's right back where you left off. So it was a great way for me to like kill time between classes back in school too. Like just going through the app campaigns or through like the regular campaigns, but playing solo and playing them on my computer in Vassal. It also saved me a bunch of time, like not having to pull out all the components I needed all the time, just playing on my computer. I've seen a game played online, what do you call it? A campaign. It works. There's all the pieces you need are there. Like I said, it's a bit. I mean, I didn't say this yet, but it is a bit clunky sometimes with all the windows and having cards in different windows and stuff. It's not as seamless or streamlined as having all the components all on one table, the way you would in real world or in tabletop simulator. But it works. It serves a purpose and it functions.
Yep. It's like you get down to the bare necessities and get it done. You know, it's not pretty, no bells and whistles, but it does what you need it to do. Play a good game.
Yeah, exactly.
And the fact that it has online connectivity too is nice. That you can just kind of jump into a server or a room. You don't need to know any complex. server IPs or anything. It's just you download the module and everything kind of works. You click a button, make a new room, and people can join, and you start playing.
Yep. So let's talk about the next one, which is going to be Tabletop Simulator, which I'm going to throw here on the screen. Oh, that didn't work. Here we go. So Tabletop Simulator, this is a Steam program. So those familiar, Steam is a online games marketplace that is managed by the company Valve, where you can get all kinds of different games. And as you can see here, Tabletop Simulator is a full 3D tabletop game simulation program, and it's highly customizable. And so, of course, people have made Imperial Assault mods for it, and you can do that. You can find those by going to the Steam Workshop for Tabletop Admiral. I'll have some links in the description, but I do also have a tutorial video on my channel that you can go watch. That's how to set up and run Tabletop Simulator. And here you can see I mean Wesley can't see it, but I have Imperial Assault. This is the 3D terrain module for campaign. It's kind of cycling through some screen caps here, and I think this is the one that people use for campaign mostly.
The one by Draw.
Drod.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a heavily scripted one that has 3D terrain. I would say that it's got everything for campaign in it, and it's got 90% of the maps are pre-scripted for you. So you kind of just click a few buttons and it loads everything in. It's got a full HUD system to track initiative, what activations have gone, what conditions people have, what their healths are. If an enemy reaches zero, it'll either automatically wound them, or it will, if it's an enemy, it will just die and do a Wilhelm scream. There are voice lines. It has a full automated dice tray. There's a crazy amount of work that's been put into this one. I would say the flaw here, which is something I think you were going to get into, is I do get a few freezes on there sometimes, and or a few quick freezes. I think it's a more intensive on your GPU. There's a lot of scripting and background going on, so things can kind of freeze up. It's harder to run than Vassal. I think you mentioned in your notes that you had issues running something on your own GPU on tabletop. Was that in this mod?
Yeah, it's kind of just tabletop in general lately. So yeah, like you said, one of the advantages of Tabletop Simulator is there's a lot of scripting available, and a lot of scripting has been done. So like in Vassal, you kind of just have to drag everything all over the place manually to do something. But in Tabletop Simulator, especially in these mods that people have made, you can just kind of click a button and components will all fly magically to their correct location, kind of like Mary Poppins or something.
Maybe you disconnected your mic.
Oh, hold on. Can you hear me now? Technical difficulties. Okay, can you hear me now? Hello, can you hear me now?
Okay, I think you're back.
Okay, sorry, it's because I opened Discord in another window, so it took my mic away from. Anyway, so I was saying that there's more scripting in Tabletop Simulator. So you push a button and like all the components fly to their correct location, kind of like Mary Poppins cleaning up. And in Vassal, you kind of have to drag everything everywhere manually. But the problem with that is that it demands a lot of computing power to do that, and it also demands a lot of computing power just to render all of the components in 3D and the environment in 3D. And so it can be really taxing on your computer, especially if you don't have like a gaming computer. If you have kind of just like an old like laptop or whatever, like a work laptop, Tabletop Simulator is probably not ideal for you compared to Vassal.
I think there are machines that aren't going to be able to handle tabletop, and that's true. but I don't want to confuse everyone and say that this is high fidelity, high end, everything top notch. Like this is Crisis 3. Um, I have run tabletop for other mods in the past on my school laptop, which I had been using since 10 or 12 years ago, I think, at this point. So it is, doable, especially if you're not the host. Um, and I was going to get into another mod recommendation that uses a little less scripting. If you do have kind of a lower end machine and you're kind of worried about all the freezes that'll happen, there is a Imperial Assault mod called Imperial Assault Campaign, and this is by H&S Fearless. It still has all the components, but you kind of have to do everything manually, but it's still in 3D, still tabletop. Um, but I think with less scripting and less things that could break, you're going to have a few less issues if you're either a little less tech savvy or have a lower end machine, and it might still work out for you.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like Crisis or anything, but I just noticed like it tends to crash on my computer when I try to run it.
Yeah,
Especially lately, it's just been really unstable, I think. I don't know. But the other thing
it's
is,
unfortunate, but I think you said before that might be just an issue with your own specific machine.
yeah, maybe. I mean, I've got like a 16 gigabyte processor.
Yeah,
Um,
which doesn't seem like it should be crashing tabletops in.
I noticed that it was running okay for me a while ago, but then like a year ago, they switched something. They like changed their core code, and a bunch of stuff stopped working whenever I tried to load it up. And people were saying like, "Oh yeah, you gotta toggle this one option and options, and that'll fix it." But it never. It just takes forever for like when I try to load a module, it takes forever for all the components to load up. So I used to use it for like solo campaigns and stuff, but
Yeah,
it's fine. I think people really enjoy it for campaign. It's a really nice experience when it does work. It really gives you that feeling of like you're playing at an actual table, and
mhm.
easier to navigate through all the cards on the one surface. But I will say nobody uses this for skirmish anymore, except for maybe people who are playing like vanilla skirmish, um, just with their friends, because the skirmish module is no longer being updated since IACP Season 5. There is a really nice one, and I've got it up on the screen here, that was great. It was made by a fellow we know as Travis, and had a nice, really great load list from Tabletop Admiral functionality, so you could just copy in or paste in the URL from your Tabletop Admiral saved list, and it would populate all the cards on one side. It's fantastic, and I'm sad that we still don't have that in Vassal, but unfortunately that module just isn't supported anymore in Tabletop Simulator. But a great module if you want to play just like vanilla skirmish.
Yeah, I think it had IACP, but those images, their host was taken down, or for some reason they just don't work right now in that mod.
Yeah, because he's not updating the module at all, so
Hmm.
the URLs for the cards have changed, and so they're not loading properly.
Yeah. So if you do want to play some vanilla skirmish, there is that, which can be fun if for whatever reason you decide against using Vassal. But the majority of the community has moved over to Vassal for skirmish, and I would say tabletop remains supreme when it comes to campaign.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. Um,
Yep.
so the last thing I want to talk about is how to find the community, because obviously you need to find people to play with online in order to play online games. And so I'm trying to load up. There's two main ways that we find games for people. I'm trying to find. Oh, here. So the two main ways is the Zion's Finest Slack channel, and as always, I post a link to how to join that in my video descriptions. But this is where a lot of the community discussions happening around the game, and there is a looking for game Vassal channel in that Slack, and people are very often posting in there looking for games, looking to set up games. You can see it up here. We've got people posting games in the last few days. And then the other one is the IACP Discord, which unfortunately I can't load because if I open it in a new window, it will kill my microphone in our chat room. But
Unfortunately.
but there is a looking for game channel in the Discord as well.
And
I
I'm sure you'll post a link to that in
Yep.
the description.
Yeah, and I post it in every video I post. So
Yep.
I think the Discord's less active than the Slack. So if you want to get more consistent responses, I think Slack's the way to go. But
Especially if you're into skirmish. Slack is where everyone's at, especially for Look for Games.
that's true. I think there's a more active campaign group going on in Discord right now. But I think either
Yeah,
one you'd be able to find somebody.
yeah, six or eight people kind of pop in and out of the campaign chat trying to work something out for a new campaign every so often. Uh, so I think more recently there's been more consistent activity on that. This is also a good place to just talk about IA in general and not specifically, it's the IACP Discord, but people talk about all kinds of IA in the Discord, whether it be four-player mode or skirmish or IACP skirmish, or just talking about what characters they want to see. Then if you want to get into, what's coming up in the next season, what the current tournament league is, things like that, that's going to be localized, not localized, but specialized in the Slack. That's what they focus on.
Yeah, and then the last thing I want to talk about is for getting games online is organized play. We host a lot of competitive leagues. We host a lot of competitive tournaments. They're pretty much all free to enter, and we do them all over Vassal and Discord. So keep your eyes open on the Slack channels and on the main ICP website. We post our events up there in the event area and how to sign up and all that. And joining one of those is a great way to get a game because we're going to organize it and we're going to tell your opponent, hey, get it scheduled, get it played. And so that's a great way to get games in, is joining our organized play system.
Mm-hmm. And then you also have the tournaments, which are, you're going to pair everybody up and it's all at a specified time.
Yep, we do. So we do weekly leagues where you organize a game with somebody every week. And then we do tournaments where, like, once a month we have a free tournament on a Saturday and everybody's supposed to join at the same time, and everybody plays 3 games back to back, and it's great. It's great fun, and then whoever has the best record can play for more prizes, but you're guaranteed at least 3 games that day.
Yep. And you'll probably see us recording that next weekend, as the next one's coming up.
That's right. Okay, well, I think we're ready to wrap up. Wesley, you have any comments on online play or anything you want to talk about?
Yeah, I guess just if you're going to look at the tabletop simulator mods for campaign, I will say one of the great things is even the scripted one, it has a tutorial and you can just type in tile names to start spawning in tiles and build things yourself if you want to do custom maps. So that's a good little tidbit we missed. But besides that, I think online play is, the dominant way that we're doing this right now. It'd be great to see some more in-person play as we move forward. But these times, this is going to be the easiest way to grow the community.
Yeah, and I do want to say we do have plans to promote more in-person play, but this is what we have right now. But we're working on it.
Great. So yeah, I think we're ready to start wrapping up.
All right, thanks everybody for watching. Please check out all the links in the description, and hopefully we'll get to see you guys online and get to play some games. So thanks for listening. Thanks for watching if you're on YouTube, and we'll see you later. Oh, Wesley, do you have anything you want to plug?
Yeah, if this is coming out Wednesday, my first Vassal log upload should be on my own YouTube channel. It's the Second Flock is my YouTube channel name. So you should be able to see that of the recent game I played. I do have another video up there right now, but it's an ISAP video, but it's a meme, so a little different than it's worth watching though. 15-second clip. I think it'd make your day.
Sweet.
Um, and then I did want to shout out my friend just because somebody mentioned, help getting things printed. There is a patreon.com/earncommand, IRNKM as in Mary, AN. He does minis. He's a good friend of mine for a long time, and he's been going ham in this stuff. He doesn't necessarily do Star Wars, but he has made a few molds for that. So if you want to check him out, I told him I'd shout him out because we had a question earlier about printing minis.
All right, sweet. We'll throw that link up in the description as well. All right, thanks everybody for watching. We will see you later.
Thanks.